What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully everyone's doing great, having a great week, because college football is here. And before I left to Hawaii, which I know they consider this America because it's technically one of our 50 states, it's a completely different world. Stock market starts at 3:30 in the morning. Football season was going, it kicked off. I was here a couple weeks later. Monday Night Football starts at 2:15 in the afternoon. Sunday Night Football starts at 2:15 in the afternoon. So it's just, they live a different island life, that's for sure. Now, the water's beautiful, but I'm ready to get home and watch this Arch Manning versus Ohio State game on Saturday morning. I can't wait. So Jackson, for those of you longtime listeners of the show, he joined last year. We called him Intern Jackson, and we'll talk about it coming up. But he's now an official member here of the podcast of Three and Out of the Volume family. We've got him on board, and he's grinding away for us. And this guy loves college football. So I said, you know what? Let's do a big. Last year we did Kauff on Campus, where we talked a lot of college football. We're going to do that again this year for sure. Jackson's way more dialed in than me in terms of the two deeps of Miami, Notre Dame, Texas. I don't want to say I'm a casual because I'm more than that based on my consumption habits. But in terms of relative to the NFL, it's just harder in college. I don't follow 18-year-olds. Now, once they become good players in the transfer portal, it's a little easier. It's definitely, I would say, become a little easier because of the transfer portal. But we talked a lot of college football, a lot of big picture stuff. Obviously, we got some incredible games this weekend with kicking off at Ohio State, where Arch Manning will make his official, I would say, he's played before, but his debut. LSU Clemson. We got Belichick Monday night. We got a lot of fun stuff happening. So I'm fired up. I've already taken in, since I've been here, listened to some college football podcasts. And very excited. But obviously, that'll be the show today. So me and Jackson talking a little college football, and it'll be the first of many. But before we dive in, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. What's funny is we went to a luau the other night, which is quite the experience. Not typically something I would do. Maria had us do it, and it was actually really fun. I'm glad we did. We sat with some people from Oklahoma. They had both gone to OU. They go to the game every year. I'm like, we went to Texas, Oklahoma last year. I'm a acquired Sooner fan. So if you want to go to one of these games, an SEC game, a Big Ten game, an ACC game, you name it, any college football game. My Fresno State Bulldogs are not going to be any good. But any of these teams you want to see, obviously the NFL, they got you covered. Concerts, comedy shows. It does not get any easier. I can't recommend my friends at Gametime enough. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN. That's my name, John, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Let's dive into Jackson. Okay, very, very fired up because a couple years ago, this young whippersnapper came up to me on the driving range and started just firing football takes at me. Then last year, you heard him come on the podcast and talk a little football. This year, for those of you that don't know, I've definitely mentioned this on the podcast a time or two. We've gotten Jackson involved on the show, operating behind the scenes, part of the Volume family. He even moved downtown Scottsdale, and no one I know loves college football in Notre Dame more than this young man. Jackson, called him Intern Jackson. Now he's Producer Jackson. Jackson, what's up, bro?
It's so funny. When I got the job and I announced it, I had so many comments of people that were like, well, can I still call you Intern Jackson? I'm like, well, how about just Jackson? Like, let's just Jackson, Producer Jackson, kind of work it that way. But no, man, I'm forever grateful and in debt for that conversation. It's just crazy. Like, you nag someone on a driving range and you just never know what happens. So I'm no longer working at the golf course, which is nice. I'd rather prefer, doing this kind of stuff. But man, I'm excited at college football. There's just so much. It seems like every year in college football, it gets more and more wide open and there's more questions than ever before this season. So I'm excited to talk college football, man. It's going to be fun.
You give people that, we get so many new listeners every single week, every single month. You were a walk-on wide receiver at the University of Montana. They've won a few natties over the years. You didn't win a natty, did you?
No, we didn't get close. I think we went to the semifinals my sophomore year. Didn't win a Big Sky title, but like Montana, for those who don't know, Big Sky football, University of Montana, it's kind of like a miniature version of Nebraska. Like they're diehards there. They live, breathe, and die by Montana. They have a rivalry trophy. It's like 3,000 pounds between Montana State. So I'm from here, went there, walked on football. Didn't play as long as I wanted to, but unfortunately for me, it started my broadcasting career earlier, had a podcast out of college, and then that led me to work for a 7-on-7 company, which led me to working here locally at radio and then working golf on the side too. And I'm sure you're the same way. Like, it's crazy how you just meet people out of nowhere. Like, I met you at my side golf job, just talking normal and then just making content on the side. And one day you're like, hey, like, you want to come on the show? Like, I think you said you were thinking about me in the sauna, which I don't know how I think about that, but hey, if it's positive, then I guess it's good. But
yeah, one of the greatest viral moments I've ever seen on TV is Charles Barkley talking about this guy that gave him a bracelet, and Shaq asked him, like, where'd he give it to you? He said, in the sauna, and they sort of felt like they were both naked, clearly, and handed it to him. But I sometimes in the gym I go to, they are doing like a remodel of the locker room. So I haven't been in the sauna or steam room for a long time, but that is one area I'm probably like a lot of people. My headphones are in my ear way too much. I listen to way too much shit, and sometimes you just don't get a chance to think. And that's one area where I just sit in the sauna, specifically the sauna. There's always way more people in the steam room, so I can just sit there a lot of times by myself and just get in deep thought. And I was like, you know what? Fucking get Jackson involved. And now it's like what was it, like a month ago, you and me went to the golf course in about 120 degrees, and we shot a bunch of content. You watched me just, that's the last time I played golf. So now football season's here, and I'll play less and less. But I wanted to bring you on. So it's right around the corner. Being at Fox, obviously the NFL is king in that building, but you really feel the power of college football. It's a really big deal for that network. They have a game coming up, with Arch Manning and Klatt has become, the Fox's Herb Street. And it's like, God, I'm fired up. I'm ready for this season, and I'm pretty excited, bro.
Yeah, you wish that Arch Manning versus Ohio State game maybe at nights. Noon game is fine. With the slate of games, you got Clemson, LSU at night, obviously Alabama, Florida State in the middle, but you talked Arch Manning, Ohio State. Expectations going in. I think there's more question marks on Ohio State versus Texas. I would say heading in that I feel more comfortable. Texas is an underdog in that game, but your thoughts on Arch Manning, Ohio State? Because I guess they're an underdog because they're on the road and Arch Manning, but then you look at Ohio State, it's like you got two new coordinators. Like, what will Matt Patricia look like with they lost 8 guys defensively. And then on offense, you got a new quarterback who they've said a lot of good things about him. The last recruited quarterback that Nick Saban recruited before he left, and he transfers over to Ohio State, sits a year. And the battle was kind of closer with Keenholz, but I don't know if that's something that Ryan Day, anticipated before the season, just kind of keep it competitive for fall camp. But I feel like for me, at least heading into this game, Texas being an underdog, I would lean towards them. But then it's like, well, Arch Manning hasn't really played a game as big as this in his career.
Well, it feels like all of Ohio State's defense last year, the big thing was like they came back to kind of right the wrong against Michigan. Turned out they didn't do that, but they won the national championship, so it was all worth it. But they are reloading a lot. And I here's the thing. When you lose players at Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, Oregon now, Texas, it's not the same as like Fresno State, So it's like the guy that some of these guys that are going to play for Ohio State aren't just going to be like high-level guys. They're going to be like top 15, 20 picks over the next couple of years. Urban Meyer had a good point. He's like, when Texas played Ohio State last year, Jeremiah Smith did not have a very good game statistically because they basically double-teamed him. And he said it's actually going to be easier to double-team him now when he lost a guy that went, I think, what Tampa drafted Emeka 19th overall.
19, yeah.
So they 2 running backs that I don't know are incredible. I know one guy has, had the thing off the field in Cleveland, but that's gone now. He's back. And you got Travion Henderson, with a lot of people think are going to be like rookie of the year. So, and listen, I wasn't the biggest Will Howard guy, but by the end of the season, he was slinging around like Peyton Manning. That's just a lot. Like it's very Saban-like, right? It's like if he does come back and they're just a top 5 team, then Ohio State's just clearly the best program in the country, right?
Oh,
so it's going to be. They also got Matt Patricia, who I think is kind of a clown. I know people like him, but just in terms of like last year did the media thing with Bill, it's like he never said anything. It's like, why are you doing this? But it's like worked out for him. He gets the job at Ohio State. He clearly has a lot of these, he's worked with Bill for 20 fucking years. So it's like, how's he going to implement that in the college? Their Ohio State's defense, not only personnel wise, but I mean, their coach, it's not like he left for a better job. I think Knowles is a PA guy, and Penn State, like in Michigan and Ohio State all have unlimited money when they want to buy a guy. So I think it was kind of going home. But like that guy was a pretty good coordinator. Ryan, listen, I want to not like him. He's clearly pretty good at his job. But I think Texas, if Arch is good, I mean, it wouldn't be shocking at all if they win the national championship, right? But it's like if his name was I don't know, Arch Middlekauff or Arch Groff or Arch, you name it, it would not be the same. There's just the hype on this guy. I don't think it's unprecedented, because when you look at quarterbacks, let's just say of the internet age, the stars, like Liner, Vince Young, who, in the 2000s, it was like over time, it built and built and built, right? And then you go like the Tebows, obviously like a Burrow, a Baker, whether you became the hype winning the Heisman by your play on the field, or like the course of your career by the end, it was like, Baker's like the best player in the country, and this guy hasn't played. I mean, he played 2 games against nobodies, and then he got thrown in against Georgia. It's hard to judge him in that game when he kind of went to the bullpen for a little bit with Quinn Ewers. So I believe this. There are going to be more people watching that game. It's going to do like record numbers. Ohio State's, one of, if not the biggest brands in football. They crush. There's a reason Fox could basically, like 8 of their 12 games during the regular season are 9 a.m. kickoffs, Ohio State, or Ohio State versus Nebraska or whatever. And they're doing that for a reason. It works. But I also just think that like this, I just want to see Arch Manning. I'm fascinated. I don't know. Is he gonna be bad? I doubt it. But college football, I said this the other day on the podcast. I think there's a way bigger gap if you're like a sweet high school player, like all these kids that go on to start in like major programs, that gap than there is for like Jackson Dart going from Ole Miss to the NFL. Because you're playing against like me and you. I mean, it's not everyone you play like once you from college to the pros. If you played at Alabama or Ohio State, like you're pretty used to playing against sweet players. In high school, who knows? Like, yeah, you might play a couple good teams, but you are playing a ton of teams with people that just play football because they like playing football, not because they're any good.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. Malachi Nelson, he's a guy that was the number 1 overall quarterback. I think he's the same class as Arch Manning. He goes to USC. People have high expectations for him. Doesn't play. Then he transfers to Boise State, gets benched by this quarterback who's the same height as you and me that takes him all the way to the CFP. And then now he just barely won the starting job at UTEP. So to your point, it's like that the jump from high school to college is a lot different. You just don't know with a lot of these new quarterbacks. That's why it's like Julian Sayin, and you're hearing all this good stuff. I'm just a little hesitant like on Ohio State just in general, because you have so many different pieces. Whereas Texas, their defense is good. Like you return Colin Simmons, who was going to be a top 3 pick, him and Jeremiah Smith after this in 2027. Anthony Hill Jr. Like that defense saved them in games, and you almost hope too. You're kind of if you're Steve Sarkisian and Ewers is gone, and you finally have the opportunity with Arch, you almost kind of feel relieved. That the locker room kind of almost feels relief that okay, finally, like we don't have to sit during Georgia games and see Ewers kind of just squiver and look nervous the entire game and throw these interceptions and bad plays and have Arch Manning just kind of sit there. Now it's kind of like Steve's like, all right, well, now I can play Arch Manning. The fan base is behind me. It just feels like the movement of the locker room. It just feels like this is the year for them to kind of just take that next jump. They went to the semifinals with Quinn Ewers last year. I mean, they should have won that game
in a row. I mean, the year before they lost to Washington.
Yeah, he throws that pick 6 to Jack Sawyer. They score that drive. What happens in that game? Like that defense saved them against Ohio State. So
is it one of your boys on the staff there?
Yeah. So my receiver coach in high school coaches receivers at Texas. And he told me, it's funny. He wish I would have said this publicly. He told me January before last season about Matthew Golden before the season even started. I was like, yeah, how about Isaiah Bond? And he was like, well, no, I'm higher on Matthew Golden. So I saw him in Georgia and he was telling me about Ryan Wingo, who's going to be probably their star wide receiver. He's part of that sophomore class with Jeremiah Smith, with Ryan Williams, with Brian Wesco, like Cam Coleman. He's going to be that next guy. So I think for him and Texas and, Steve Sarkisian's offense, they've never really had that go-to receiver. It's always been kind of a bunch of guys. Isaiah Bond had expectations last year, and then the playoffs happened. Matthew Golden becomes that number one guy. If he becomes that number one guy for this offense, and then you got C.J. Baxter and Tay Wisner, who are these two running backs, they could have run the ball at all last year. So for me, it's like I look at Texas. Yeah, Arch Manning could be a concern at Ohio State, but if they could run the ball, it's like all these other supporting casts can continue to be elite. The expectations that people have set on this program, I just think Arch won't have to do as much, but the expectations placed on him, he might have to do Heisman, win the Natty. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I think I like Texas to win this game. I think an underrated point. I don't think Sark lost any. I mean, all his coordinators are back. Like his coaching staff is. I mean, he's paying a boatload. Ohio State basically is like the Lions, right?
Yeah.
Their offensive coordinator Chip leaves to the Raiders. Their defensive coordinator leaves to Penn State. Now, Brian Hartline was on the staff and, might be the future head coach somewhere. But, Chip Kelly, he's been an offensive coordinator for decades, and Patricia's never coached in the college. So I think Ohio State just has more question marks.
Yeah, just a little fun stat for you. I saw this the other day. In the last 20 years, when a quarterback makes their first start against the number one team in the country, 0-18. 0-18. So
how often, though, is it like the number one team in the country is
on the road? Yeah.
Top team,
That is true. That is true.
The rivalries, the marching bands, the upsets, Saturdays just got way more fun. College football is back, baby. Think you know the game? Put your college football knowledge to the test with DraftKings Sportsbook and turn your picks into big payouts. Live betting during the game, rivalry week odds boosts, and so much more. DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered. Here's the thing. There is no bigger game than Saturday morning. Texas, Ohio State. I understand Arch has never started a big game. Played a couple last year, but never anything like this. Ohio State lost a ton of guys to the draft. I think this Texas team, if Arch lives up to the hype, poised to win a natty, I'm taking Texas. I know it's at the shoe. I know it's a tough environment. I just think, as Earl Woods used to tell Tiger Woods, let the legend grow. That's what I would tell Arch Manning. Go win this game, cover that spread, money line, let the legend grow. And here's something special for first-timers, new customers. Bet just $5 and get 300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code John. That's code John for new customers to get 300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Another big storyline in college football, Bill Belichick, UNC. Like we were talking, college football leading to the NFL, like you're going to do a bunch of reactions for the games, and that Monday game on Labor Day, North Carolina, TCU. It's pretty crazy the parallels between Bill Belichick getting his debut against TCU and then Deion gets his debut against TCU. Kind of wild how those two played. I have no expectations. I mean, their schedule is a joke. It's so easy, but it's like 41 new transfers, which that's the only way you can really build a roster now. It's the players on that roster were crap. Go in and grab 40 guys. It's just like what Deion did last year or 2 years ago with Colorado. You just got to just bring a bunch of transfers in. What's your pace on Bill Belichick and UNC? I mean, TCU, should they win that game? Are they favored in that game? Like,
you like TCU this year? I mean, a lot of people feel like
they got a good quarterback. I just think they lost the receivers last year. I don't know a whole lot about them, but they're one of those teams that's in the Big 12 that's a part of like the 9 deep teams like them, Baylor, and obviously the Big 12 teams at the top.
To me, that, like you said, it's the 40 guys. You don't have a choice when you take over a job. I think there are two big question marks. One, part of like Belichick's scheme has always been it's pretty intense intellectually. It's why he likes like, wait, why'd you draft this guy to play safety? Why'd you draft this guy to play wide receiver? Because he values smart guys more than sometimes like blue chip talents. And because to play for Belichick and Tom, you had to be really, really sharp. And if you think about most of their top players over 20 plus years, from like Rodney Harrison to Brewski to Vrabel to like the new crew of like Edelman, McCourty, just like sharp dudes. Well, in college, like one, they don't have the pick of the litter, right? They're not recruiting the top guys, even their transfers relative. Like it's not like they're stealing a guy that Ohio State wanted or Bama wanted, so his talent's not going to be as high. And then how does he teach them fast enough? Because even Urban Meyer was on the show with Coward, and he's like, I don't even know how you could possibly build a culture in overnight when that's a big part of what Bill does is like scheme and culture. Well, it's like hard to microwave that. And he did. I don't know if you saw the quote recently. I think it was like a couple days ago where he's like, we hit and tackled way more in training camp than I ever did in the pros because we don't have preseason games because the guys we have on our staff that were college guys told me that's what you have to do. And I was thinking back to like when I was at Fresno State, all these colleges, like camp is a little more physical than the NFL because you could always be like, we got some preseason games, especially for our second and third stringers, where it's like you kind of you're picking your battles in NFL training camps than these college training camps. Like you're running full on scrimmages a lot. Like if you went to like Ravens camp, even their physical days, it's not like true scrimmages. Like you go to Ohio State or Bama or Texas, they have multiple like legit scrimmages during fall camp because that's you got to simulate the game. So how does he understand how to do that? And then there's just like I don't know. I mean, what's these young kids and him? You could argue he's just such a good coach. He'll figure it out, but I don't know. I mean, Dion had been coaching young, high school recruits at Jackson State or whatever, and he also just had I don't know his son who's the quarterback and Travis Hunter who's won the fucking Heisman. Like, does Bill have any good players? That's my thing. Because we saw the last couple of years when it ended, he didn't have any good players on the Patriots, and they sucked. Like, at the end of the day, like, Saban became a legend. Urban Meyer became a legend, right? These guys become legend because their teams are loaded. Now, the conference sucks, but, I mean, still, it's like they're no lock to beat some of the random teams in the ACC if the rosters are the same.
Yeah, we all talk about quarterbacks too. Their starting quarterback is going to be a South Alabama transfer who's 5'11", who's kind of a dual threat. So it's not something that he's used to seeing with Tom Brady and kind of these statured 6'4", 6'5" guys who are pocket passers. Like this guy's kind of an RPO run.
You know who his offensive coordinator is?
I don't know. I know his son is obviously the defensive coordinator. I don't know who his OC is.
It's Freddie Kitchens, who, if you remember, was the coach for a year with Baker Mayfield. If you told me the equivalent of Freddie Kitchens was his defensive coordinator, I'd be like, no, that's Belichick's baby. Flores is an excellent defensive coordinator with or without him. Patricia's not, right? But it's like Belichick can run it. It does whether he's got Romeo Crennel, he can figure that out. The offensive coordinator matters. Bill was sweet with Josh McDaniels. When he didn't have Josh McDaniels, they sucked. So it's like Freddie Kitchens, I don't know. And the guy was a joke in the NFL.
I do wonder, though, how Belichick's relationship with players is because he did take, I mean, we always kind of forget he did take a year off and was in the media and Pat McAfee, the Manning brothers. He did show some kind of personality, but you wonder how in today's college football with a lot of people like my age that are sensitive and kind of like this Gen Z new age people, like how do they, does Bill kind of like go in between of a hardcore NFL coach and what he was with McAfee to kind of just relate to these players? Like after the game, if they beat TCU, are they dumping the Gatorade on him? Are they hugging him? Like, are they kind of backing a I don't know, just the relationship with that. And then on top of that, you had his girlfriend in the mix. Like we haven't heard anything all fall camp, thank God. Who knows if we will the entire season. But it's just one of those operations where I'm very excited to watch it week to week. Just a lot of unknown players that you can't really say on because it's a guy from South Alabama is your starting quarterback. I don't know how he's going to be in the ACC.
Yeah, to me, a little runaround guy does just not feel like Bill Belichick, right? No. If you think about it, even when he tried to replace Tom, it was with Jimmy Garoppolo and then Mac Jones. But that's the best they could do. Like, they looked around like, what were their options? So, yeah, you could convince me he wins 8-9 games because of the schedule. You could also convince me his players aren't any good and it's just kind of a disaster and it's like 5-6 wins, right? It could be a little it would look a lot different than Dion because at the end of the day, even when they were sucking that first year, they still like Shador and Travis Hunter. Like, is Bill going to have, they got first round talent on their team? I don't know.
No idea.
Doubt it.
And they're obviously the biggest thing in college football right now is NIL. And you had this question, you texted it, and I thought it was spot on to bring onto the show about teams that are keeping up in the NIL era. I listed a ton of teams. I do think there's some teams that have NIL and are capable of paying, but maybe it's the head coach is priority one. Or like Arkansas, for example, they pay Calipari a ton of money. That roster, it's a basketball school. I feel like they're craving football, but is Sam Pittman the long-term answer? I don't know. Is Mark Stoops the long-term answer? I don't know. Hugh Freeze, like, what is your take on, I guess, what are some teams right now who are keeping in NIL that kind of just are on the top of your head in this
Well,
kind
I
of
think
college football?
forever, even back in the day when you were just brown bagging a kid for, I don't know, 20 grand. If he sucked, you could just bench him. And it was like, whatever, we'll go with the other guy. You posted something recently of Hugh Freeze with Jackson Arnold, who got a lot of NIL money, I think, from Oklahoma. I think he was one of the top 5 quarterbacks in his class. It's like Nico and Arch. Like, he was a highly touted, might have been the previous year or the year after Arch.
I think it was the same year. Yeah.
But he was a highly touted, like, blue chip guy. And this happens in college football. No different than the draft. Like, you think he's sweet, then he's not, but he gets a lot of money. But then that guy usually gets a lot of opportunity to transfer. Like Nico. There's a chance Nico's just a bust. But you're paying this guy a bunch of money. And who's the backup for Auburn?
Deuce Knights. And then they also have Ashton Daniels, transfer from Stanford. He was their starting quarterback, but he kind of seems like a guy like, hey, let me get more NIL money, be a backup. Deuce Knights, the guy that's the 5-star that I said, kind of like when DJ Lagway came into Florida and everyone's screaming down Billy Napier's neck, like, start Lagway. He's like, no, I'm going to go with Mertz. He's got more reps. And Mertz ended up getting hurt, which opened up the door for DJ Lagway, and they ended up having the back end of the season, and it saved his ass. Like, they became bowl eligible. They don't become bowl eligible, and he doesn't get that recruit. I don't know if Billy Napier is still coaching at Florida. So that's like the same thing with Florida. It's like, or with Auburn, is Jackson Arnold going to be that guy? I just have no idea. You saw him in Oklahoma last year. He just looked like a deer in the headlights.
Terrible. So to me, it's like how that impacts, because all the top 25, the big Big Ten schools, all the SEC schools, some of the Big 12 and ACC schools, they pay a lot of money for these quarterbacks. I mean, they pay a decent amount of money, right? I mean, relative to society, making hundreds of thousands of dollars to position players. When you're giving a quarterback on the low end $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, you're going to play him. But if the guy sucks, like, you got to pivot. And that's, to me, the coaches with more juice. Like, Kirby can do whatever he wants. Ryan Day can do whatever he wants. Lane Kiffin will do whatever he wants. But a guy like Hugh Freeze or some of these people, Venables, they get in this position, like, do they feel pressure from the money guys? It's kind of old school college football that way, where, like, the boosters are kind of in control. Like, Sark now is in the, like, he can kind of do whatever he wants. Like, he's been winning. DeBoer, like, he's kind of got to win to keep people off his back to get to that, like, do whatever you want. Like, Brian Kelly, like, is there outside influence? It just makes things complicated when these numbers get so big. And as we sit right now, like, the money is coming basically from the boosters and the program. So there is a lot of different people where it's like in the NFL, it's like your coach and GM just do whatever, right? It's just, you just got the salary cap. It's money. It's like free money from the league, from the media. It's just become really complicated. But it's also like Texas Tech just all of a sudden gets this billionaire guy. That's where it kind of shifts. Like, Oregon kind of became that. I do think there are more programs that will enter the chat, like Texas Tech, North Carolina State, Luck. I don't know if you've noticed, Luck is just really out in front right now. And I think he realized the only way for this to work is, like, I got to be kind of front and center. Like, I got to be the star to also generate the money so we can buy these players. And it's just added an element. Like, 10 years ago, I don't think Andrew Luck, even if they would have created this position for him, would have to do what he's kind of doing, which I respect, because you would have been like, Luck's kind of nerdy. He's not going to want to talk. He's talking all the time, which I think he realized I have to generate, like, he's kind of doing his version of, like, Deion Sanders.
I said earlier, like, I worked sports radio in Arizona, and you would see first year after Dillingham had to replace Herm Edwards and the whole suspension thing, and Kenny being a guy that's from Arizona, he'd go on every radio show, every TV show in the Valley. Fun. We need the NIL money. Like, if we can get the money, keep these players, we can turn something special. And then what happened last year, them going out and winning the Big 12. And he talked about in the offseason, I think you touched on your podcast too, or on the show, that the roster retention is something that they haven't really experienced at Arizona State until this year. So like, they're another team where, not to the level of Ohio State or the Texas Techs of the world that getting all this money, but in a big city like Tempe, Scottsdale, Maricopa County, like, those are the type of like teams I think in college that there's some fan bases that are holding back a little bit. But if you can prove that you can win and you can kind of keep these elite players, like, I think Arizona State's one of those teams that could not get 5-star recruits, but could they get some 4 stars, and they're getting some backups from Clemson and Alabama. Like, Arizona State could not do that 10 years ago. So you're like, to your point about luck, you got to sell yourself, and then you got to prove that you can win. And then after that, once the wins start coming, then it's like, okay, let's pile on and kind of rebuild this program. I do think, though, too, 2 programs. I know we're going to talk about Notre Dame later. It feels like Oregon and Notre Dame, and maybe some other ones that come to your head, in this new era of college football, have felt like they've just like taken that next leap with like everybody else. Like, the gap between Georgia and Bama and them has shrunk a ton.
I would agree, and I think a huge part of that is the distribution of the players, and that there was an element of the top. I'd even say 5 or 6 programs truly were going too deep with NFL guys. Well, if you have a backup now, like Arch Manning's kind of an outlier. Like, most guys will wait a year maybe, but then they'll just leave because they will get paid. And the dirty recruiting aspect of like people just DMing you, people trying to steal you at all moments. That's where I think college football really needs. I even saw Rich Paul say this. He's like, in our business, right? Like, I give LeBron $50 million, and the ROI is expecting him to be a great player, and you win games. And it's like a part, even if you could say LeBron James is not always the greatest partner, if he's on your team, you're typically winning. You're always winning, right? But there's an ROI in pro sports. Like, I pay you a lot for production, right? That's where in college football, it's like, I pay you a lot, so you get to do whatever you want. That's not how any of these other businesses work, right? It's like you can just up and leave. I mean, some of these guys, there's been guys that have like transferred 3 times in a calendar year. Like, that's where it's like they got to figure out a way to. I'd be on board of like, you sign a contract like multiple years. It's like, well, you shouldn't force a kid. Well, it's like, well, if I'm paying him $2 million in a 2-year contract, like, fuck yeah, I can. I totally agree. The old way, it's like, kind of had him by the balls and weren't paying him anything. Nowadays, it's like, what's going on? That was the whole Nico thing. It's like, I gave you a 4-year contract at $8-9 million. It's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
And I watched it last year. Little hit or miss.
Yeah, he ran out of bounds against Arkansas with the last play of the game instead of throwing it up. And then that Tennessee game, he was nowhere to be found. I guess he kind of ran for some touchdowns too, but to your point, he didn't really live up to that production.
You showed up for a quick 9 that turned into 18. The vibes were too good, so now you're chasing 36. Blame the pure drives, birdie putts, and the Transfusion 5-hour energy shots. Inspired by golf's unofficial cocktail known as the Transfusion, this product brings the iconic hole-in-one combination of grape, lime, and ginger flavors to a non-alcoholic Transfusion 5-hour energy shot. Made with the classic 5-hour energy zero blend of B vitamins, nutrients, and caffeine. It'll keep you clutch on the course and bring the party to the clubhouse afterwards. Perfectly sized for any golf bag. Don't hit the links without one. What are you waiting for? Amp up your next round and bomb more drives with a Transfusion 5-hour energy shot. Available now. For more information, visit 5hourenergy.com.
But speaking of quarterbacks, who do you think right now, because in college football, so many new quarterbacks, right? The top 25, Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Oregon, Alabama, Miami, all have new quarterbacks. Miami, Oklahoma, some transfers. But when you look at this season, it seems like this year, there's a lot of guys that have stayed a lot of years, that have not transferred to other schools. Like a couple years ago, it was the Final Four were all transfer quarterbacks. Heisman was all transfers. This year just seems like a bunch of older guys, Klubnik, Aller, Nussmeier. Like, who, in your opinion, like, who is the best returning quarterback that you're like, all right, that guy could be a dude to watch out for that could lead to a national championship.
Yeah, I want it to be Aller, but it's just hard to that throw across his body, and you just watch him on a week in, week out basis can be a little hit or miss. To me, Nussmeier, that second half against Texas A&M, he's a really good player, but it's like kind of Cousins-y vibes, I would say. Again, solid, but like number one overall. The Lagway, you watch that SEC Netflix show. I mean, the guy's a big time talent, and they got a lot of hype coming in. They have a schedule is pretty crazy. To me, Sellers uh, is intriguing, but to me, he's a little bit more of like, okay, let's just see, that kind of style of playing quarterback. To me, Lagway is what like pops. Like if you're talking number one, if they all play at a high level, it's like that guy's the number one overall pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Aller's one of those guys that probably gets drafted higher than people like, wait, he got drafted where? Now his team's going to be good. He's going to win a ton of games during his college career, but he can just be a little bit of a wild card. Now their two running backs are going to be sweet. But I think that crew of guys, and I was texting with a scouting buddy that went through Oklahoma. I'm like, is John Mateer like up with these top guys? He's like, just based on practice, I think a little overhyped, good player, but he's going to have a lot of people paying attention to him, right? Like Arch in that rivalry, like Arch gets 99%, but Mateer, like some people are saying he's going to win the Heisman. People think Oklahoma could be a sleeper team. So I think what's cool, and this is why football is such a big deal now. The NFL, they have a bunch of quarterbacks, right? College football, this is why college football has separated from college basketball. The first time I went on Colin's show, Rick Pitino came on. And he's like, it wasn't that long ago. I remember in the 90s when we were all equals. College basketball, college football, the NFL, the NBA. I was like, I agree. That's what I grew up on. And this is Rick Pitino. He's like, football in the pros and college has just gone like this. And a big reason for, like when I was a kid, these star players would play college basketball for Cooper Flagg would have played minimum 2 years. So they build up like we've known about Nussmeier now or DJ Lagway or you name it, right? Yeah. Oh, Klubnik. Like he's another guy. I mean, he clearly pretty talented. I'm just intrigued. I wouldn't bet on any of these guys being the number one overall. I think it could be you flip a coin, right? And which is a good thing. Like that's what you want. A ton of stars and Arch Manning's showing up. And we know there'll be a couple guys like Joe Burrow kind of came out of nowhere. Cam Newton had one. Like that's the thing with college football. You're going to get two or three guys like we are 100% not talking about, or maybe not even know of because they've been a backup, they've transferred, and then all of a sudden that happened to Cam Ward.
Yeah,
not Carson. Carson Beck would be the one guy that like I'm out on. We'll see.
Nothing will rekindle those feelings that you had. I guess I don't know if you really had any feelings to begin with.
I didn't
with Carson Beck. No. We talk Ohio State, obviously Texas. I think the match between Klubnik and Nussmeier. I mean, if you're talking about in terms of like a Heisman race, like those two are like neck and neck in the Heisman odds. It feels like whoever outperforms that night is going to take that next leap. I think it's also fascinating. Just the Klubnik a year ago against Georgia looked horrible. And then like the season progresses on, and you and me were texting. We were talking on the show about this. That game against Texas. I mean, you're watching Klubnik. You're like, can Klubnik be an NFL quarterback in a year from now? And you got Garrett Riley in the third year. And then it's the weapons he has around him with Dabo Swinney. Like, I just think overall, like the circumstances that they have around him, I would trust in terms of best returning quarterback would be Nussmeier, but his coach is psychotic. So I maybe give the lean to Klubnik. But I think Klubnik's just, I mean, a couple years ago, people thought he was going to be the next DJ Uiagalelei because they thought he was going to be that next, okay, like this guy is going to be another DJU, another failed, Clemson quarterback. Because after Trevor Lawrence, they had Hunter Johnson and it didn't work out there. But he's another guy to me that I'm interested in because he's starting to be projected. I think Field Yates came out with a mock draft and they don't matter, but I think it's cool to see some of these draft prospects, draft guys see the potential in some of these quarterbacks.
That game, I mean, obviously Ohio State, Texas gets all the pub. That might be the best game, right? I mean, I don't judge Brian Kelly on his first year, but 2 years ago with Jaden Daniels, they lose that opening, I think it was Monday night game against Florida State, or might have been Sunday night, and kind of get work. Remember, Keon Coleman destroyed them. Last year, all the hype about playing USC in Vegas. Lincoln Riley wants to back out of the game. Brian Kelly's like, no chance, which I respect. Then he loses that game. the first year he has not won a week 1 game. Now, granted, he's playing real opponents at Death Valley, night game. I think there's a little of that Texas A&M like can't. I think that's what, if I'm an NFL scout or GM, and everyone's gonna like Nussmeier, good player, high character guy, impressive, people love him. That thing that like he went to at SEC Media Day when he opened up his thing and he had Lacey inside. It's like this guy's just gets it, you know.
Good dude.
And which again, I'm not even. There's not even a thing to get there. That's his boy, powerful. Like that's sad situation, awful. But it's like he just checks every fucking box. But like you play a lot of road games in the NFL, you know. And if your team gets good, they're hard road games at night. And it's like that A&M thing. He melted down. And this Clemson defense, I mean, they have how many guys projected? Like you said, mock drafts in August change a lot. But like clearly Clemson has multiple guys that are viewed as top 10 picks, top 15 picks on defense, multiple defensive linemen. So it's like, buckle up, because that's what A&M was. Shamar Stewart, they had a bunch of dudes. And it's like, let's see it. Because I remember I sat right back here and watched that game at night. I'm like, LSU is kicking the shit out of these guys. And then it flipped. And then they got destroyed.
Yeah, that's been the biggest thing for LSU. They couldn't stop Marcel Reed because they made that quarterback change because Weigman started that game. Marcel Reed comes in. And LSU, that's been their biggest thing. And that's like transitioning to, pressure onto the SEC. Like, to me, I think LSU has the most pressure this season because, like you said, like Garrett Nussmeier, like, can he stop being cute late in games like he was last year? Like, the first half's great. Then they come in, LSU this season, they say, you know what, we're going to invest in the transfer portal. They spent $18 million this year on the roster. They spent $11 million the last 3 years on this roster. So Brian Kelly's finally going in. You had Josh Pate talking about how he's finally bringing the Louisiana people back in. Like, to me, it's LSU. I know they haven't made the college football playoff, but how this roster is built, they are 6 deep at wide receiver. The offensive line might be a question, but you talk about NFL guys. Harold Perkins Jr. is a dude. Whit Weeks is the linebacker. They've got some good safeties from the portal. Like, to me, it's like now or never for Brian Kelly and try to win over this LSU crowd to kind of keep the momentum for the next couple of years. And then even for Nussmeier himself, like you return back, you could have went to the NFL and been a first-round pick. Like, I feel like the pressure is really high for LSU, and they start out horrible. I do give Brian Kelly credit for keeping the game in Clemson, keeping it on the schedule. Like, you did not have to you could have made it a neutral site game. No one would have no one would have cared if it would have been a neutral site game. But it just feels like this year, Brian Kelly with the schedule, they could go 1-2 their first 3 weeks because they got that. They got Florida at home. So I just think LSU, they got the most pressure.
I totally agree because you could say Florida, but it's like I still think people that have no problem firing Billy Napier, right? He's not. They gave this guy $90 million. And listen, I think he's a little douchey. I mean, the comment he had in that Netflix thing is like, my mortgage depends on. No, someone who lives paychecks to paycheck worries about their mortgage. You've made $150 million coaching football the last 15 years. You could pay cash for the house if you want to do yesterday. Like, shut up. But from 17 on, he went 10-3, 12-1, 11-2, 10-2, 11-1. Like, this guy was viewed as like a guy that if Notre Dame had a little bit lower academic requirements, like they'd be winning natties, right? That was the thing. Then he gets to LSU, and 2 years ago, and this sometimes ages worse when it's like, well, we had the Heisman Trophy winner, we had the best offense. It's like you probably could have won a national championship if your defense wasn't a joke, right? You had Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and Jaden Daniels. Like, historically, LSU has good defenses, right? It's like Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia. Like, when I think LSU, honestly, up until like Burrow, I always thought defense. And you'd think Brian Kelly, I know he's an offensive guy, but like his defense is Notre Dame, tough, bunch of NFL guys. And I just think the expectations, and then last year Notre Dame is in the national championship, and this guy is 9-3 again. Or actually, last year he was 8-4 in the regular season. So they won the bowl game. I just think by far, right? You'd say DeBoer, but he's not going anywhere. He's getting multiple years. Florida, I think people are already kind of on the fence of that guy anyway. It was like, is DJ Lagway? Like, even their schedule is really hard. If they got to fire him, no one will hesitate. Like, this becomes a major, major problem if they're 9-3 again. And I would say, listen, I respect you playing these big time games, but eventually you got to win one of them, right? You got like Dabo's won a lot of these over the course of his career, right? Saban and Kirby and Ryan Day, like they've won a lot of games. So knock on James Franklin, but like James Franklin has been winning at a really high level at Penn State, and last year he gets to the Final Four, right? And honestly, if his quarterback doesn't make just a boneheaded throw, probably wins that game or has a decent chance to win that game. Like they played a winning football game. I'm not putting Drew Aller's pass on James Franklin. Like I was Brian Kelly's just kind of been a letdown, I feel like, at LSU.
You even watch that SEC Netflix show and you hear him yelling at his team. It's just like it's a weird vibe between a really old school guy, like I'm doing it my way, I'm not doing it anyone else's way, kind of mentality in this new college football era where we're all adapting to different things in the sport. Yeah, I think it's
I'll give you an example. When like Florida State, who maybe the Norvell and that program just falls apart. No one expects them to beat Alabama. They're like a 2-touchdown underdog. So if they do lose by 20 points, like whatever, like they could still have a solid season, or maybe they suck. But the expectations on that, when you look at LSU Clemson, like he's a 3.5-point underdog. So it's that. And listen, like that's definitely when you got NFL players and you got an NFL quarterback, like it's a winnable game. And yeah, would it be an impressive win? For sure. But they're paying you $90 million to, I don't know, win a game like this. So it's like if he can't win this game and it does snowball, I know it gets a lot more complicated with buyouts and stuff. I would say that the LSU would, if he started 1-2 and they lost to Florida, you just look at their schedule. There's no way they could make the playoffs because that would mean that something's really wrong. He would be like, people would just be out on him there.
Yeah, because they got A&M at Bama and at Oklahoma the back end of the season. So you got two really hard road games and then A&M too. I also think it was a bad look last year when he slammed the table against USC and he's calling out his players and saying we weren't prepared enough and I can't get these guys right. And that South Carolina game, they should have lost that game when Oris Sellers gets hurt, but that was one of those collapses too from last year.